The morning sun glinted off the pristine white fence as Suzanne glared at the offending bird feeder, her knuckles white on the official HOA notice. Little did she know, the city had a very different plan, one that would rock this neighborhood to its core. Suzanne's eyes scanned the bold text, her jaw tightening with each word. Removal of unauthorized bird feeder. Violation of community guidelines. She crumpled the paper in her fist, storming back into the house. I don't care what those HOA busybodies say, I'm not taking it down, she shouted, slamming the door behind her. Her husband, Mark, looked up from his breakfast, eyebrows raised. What's going on? He asked, setting down his coffee mug. The HOA is demanding I remove my bird feeder. Can you believe the nerve of these people? Suzanne fumed, pacing the kitchen. Mark sighed. Honey, you know how strict they are about the guidelines. Maybe it's best if we just comply for now, avoid any trouble. Avoid trouble. Suzanne interrupted, her eyes flashing. This is our home, Mark. I'm not going to let them dictate what I can and can't do in my own yard. She squared her shoulders, determination etched on her face. I'm going to the HOA meeting tonight to fight this. That evening, Suzanne strode into the community center, her bird feeder in hand. The other board members eyed her warily as she stepped up to the podium. This bird feeder is a vital part of our local ecosystem, she declared, her voice ringing out. It provides food and shelter for countless species of birds, and it's an important educational tool for our children. She met the gaze of each board member in turn. Removing it would be a detriment to our community. The HOA president, Mrs. Wilkins, cleared her throat. Ms. Parsons, while we appreciate your passion for the environment, the guidelines clearly state that freestanding structures are not permitted in the front yard. I'm afraid you'll have to remove the feeder. Suzanne's grip tightened on the wooden post. But this feeder is more than just a structure. It's a living, breathing part of our natural world. Surely you can make an exception in this case. Mrs. Wilkins shook her head, her lips pursed. I'm sorry, but the rules are the rules. If you don't remove the feeder, we'll have no choice but to issue a fine. Suzanne's eyes narrowed. Fine. I'll remove it. She turned and walked out of the meeting, her shoulders tense with barely contained anger. As Suzanne approached her house, she noticed a small crowd gathered on the sidewalk. Curious, she hurried forward and gasped as she saw her beloved bird feeder lying in a crumpled heap on the ground, the wooden post snapped in two. What happened? She cried, rushing to the scene. A young woman, her face twisted in a sneer, stepped forward. I saw you at the meeting, Suzanne. Heard you talking about how important that stupid feeder was. Couldn't let that stand. Now could I. Suzanne's eyes widened in horror. You did this. The woman shrugged, a malicious grin spreading across her face. Maybe next time you'll think twice about going against the HOA. Susan felt the blood pounding in her ears, her vision narrowing to a tunnel. This wasn't just about a bird feeder anymore. It was a declaration of war. The next morning, Suzanne marched into City Hall, determination etched on her face. She strode up to the receptionist's desk, her voice sharp. I need to speak with the mayor. It's an urgent matter. The receptionist blinked in surprise. I'm afraid the mayor's schedule is quite full today. Do you have an appointment? Susan leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. This can't wait. Tell him it's about an illegal act committed by the HOA in our neighborhood. The receptionist hesitated, then nodded. Wait here, please. Moments later, the mayor himself emerged, his brow furrowed with concern. Ms. Parsons, I understand you have a pressing issue to discuss. Please come into my office. Susan followed him, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Once they were seated, she launched into her story. The bird feeder, the HOA's demands, and the shocking act of vandalism the night before. The mayor listened intently, his expression growing graver with each detail. When Suzanne finished, he leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin. This is a serious matter, Miss Parsons. Vandalism and the abuse of power by an HOA are not to be taken lightly. He met her gaze, his eyes hardening. I'll look into this immediately and see what can be done. Susan felt a surge of relief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to protect my community and the wildlife that calls it home. The mayor nodded. I understand. I'll be in touch soon. He stood, and Susan followed suit, her steps lighter as she left City Hall. Over the next few days, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers and speculation. Susan kept a close eye on her yard, but the bird feeder remained untouched. Then, one morning, she opened her front door to find a small, neatly typed note tucked into the doorframe. Miss Parsons, please meet me at City Hall this afternoon at 2 p.m. I have an important update. Intrigued, Susan made her way to the mayor's office, her heart pounding with anticipation. When she arrived, the mayor greeted her with a warm smile. Miss Parsons, thank you for coming. I've looked into the matter of your bird feeder, and I have some good news. Susan leaned forward, her eyes wide. It turns out that the bird feeder is actually part of a certified wildlife habitat program run by the city. The guidelines you were given by the HOA are in direct conflict with our own environmental initiatives. Suzanne's jaw dropped. You mean, the HOA was wrong? The mayor nodded. Precisely. I've spoken with the HOA president, and she has agreed to not only rescind the demand to remove your feeder, but to also provide reimbursement for the cost of replacing it. Susan felt a wave of relief and triumph wash over her. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I can't believe the HOA tried to bully me like that. The mayor's expression darkened. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time we've had issues with the HOA overstepping their bounds. But I can assure you, we take these matters very seriously. Your bird feeder is now an officially recognized eco-spot, and the city will do everything in its power to protect it. Susan felt a smile spread across her face. This is amazing news. I can't wait to tell my neighbors, and that vandal who destroyed my feeder. The mayor's eyes gleamed. I suspect she'll be hearing from us as well. Justice will be served, Miss Parsons. You have my word. Susan left City Hall, her steps light and her heart filled with a sense of vindication. The HOA had tried to silence her, but in the end, the city had her back. She couldn't wait to see the looks on her neighbors' faces when they learned of the feeder's new status. As Susan walked home, a sense of triumph filled her. The mayor's words rang in her ears. Her bird feeder was now an officially recognized eco-spot, protected by the city. She couldn't wait to share the news with her neighbors. Rounding the corner, Susan spotted Mrs. Wilkins, the HOA president, standing on her lawn, arms crossed over her chest. Susan slowed her pace, a smirk playing on her lips. Good afternoon, Mrs. Wilkins, she called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. The older woman's brow furrowed as Susan approached. Miss Parsons, I trust you've received our letter regarding the bird feeder. Susan nodded, her smile widening. Oh yes, I did. And I have some news for you. She paused, savoring the moment. The city has deemed my bird feeder a certified eco-spot. They've instructed the HOA to not only rescind the demand for its removal, but to also provide reimbursement for the cost of replacing it. Mrs. Wilkins' face paled, her lips thinning into a tight line. That can't be possible. The HOA guidelines clearly state, the HOA guidelines are in direct conflict with the city's environmental initiatives. Suzanne interrupted, her tone airy. Apparently, your little community rules don't trump the law. The older woman's eyes narrowed, her fingers flexing as if she were itching to grab Suzanne by the shoulders. This is outrageous. We can't just let the city override our authority like this. Suzanne shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Well, that's not my problem, is it? The decision has been made, and there's nothing you can do about it. Mrs. Wilkins opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, her face flushing with anger. Susan savored the moment, knowing that the tables had turned. You may want to inform the rest of the HOA board about this, Suzanne added, her voice dripping with mock concern. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to learn about their loss of power. Without another word, Mrs. Wilkins spun on her heel and marched back into her house, the door slamming behind her. Suzanne chuckled, feeling a sense of vindication wash over her. As she approached her own home, Suzanne spotted her neighbor Sarah tending to her garden. She waved, a wide smile on her face. Sarah, you'll never guess what happened with my bird feeder. The younger woman looked up, her brow furrowed with concern. Oh no, did the HOA make you take it down? Susan shook her head, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Actually, the complete opposite. The city has officially designated it as a certified eco-spot, and the HOA has to reimburse me for the cost of replacing it. Sarah's eyes widened, and a grin spread across her face. Are you serious? That's amazing, Suzanne. She hurried over, pulling Suzanne into a tight hug. I can't believe the HOA tried to bully you like that. It's so good to see them get put in their place. Susan nodded, a satisfied smile on her face. It feels like a real victory, doesn't it? Not just for me, but for the whole neighborhood. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. This is a win for all of us who've had to deal with the HOA's nonsense over the years. The two women shared a conspiratorial laugh, their spirits lifted by the unexpected turn of events. Susan knew that the battle with the HOA was far from over, but for now, she felt a sense of triumph. A reminder that even in the face of adversity, the little guy could sometimes come out on top. In the days that followed, the news of Susan's victory over the HOA spread quickly through the neighborhood. Neighbors stopped her on the street, offering congratulations and sharing their own stories of frustration with the HOA's heavy-handed tactics. Susan basked in the attention, her confidence growing with each friendly interaction. She even noticed a shift in the way her fellow residents carried themselves. There was a newfound sense of empowerment in the air, as if the community had collectively realized the extent of the HOA's overreach. One afternoon, as Susan was tending to her garden, she heard the distinct sound of a car door slamming. Glancing up, she caught sight of Mrs. Wilkins striding across the lawn, her face a mask of fury. Miss Parsons, the HOA president barked, her voice dripping with venom. I'd like a word with you. Susan straightened up, brushing the dirt from her hands. Mrs. Wilkins, what can I do for you? The older woman's eyes narrowed. I've just received a call from the mayor's office, informing me that the city has no intention of reimbursing us for the cost of your bird feeder. Susan felt a surge of triumph. Well, that's not my problem, is it? She replied, her tone light and casual. Mrs. Wilkins' jaw tightened, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. This is unacceptable. The HOA cannot be held responsible for the city's interference in our internal affairs. Suzanne couldn't resist a small chuckle. I'm afraid that's exactly what's happening, Mrs. Wilkins. The city has made its decision, and there's nothing you can do about it. The HOA president's face flushed with rage. This is outrageous. We will not stand for this blatant disregard of our authority. I'm warning you, Miss Parsons, if you don't remove that bird feeder immediately, we'll have no choice but to take legal action. Suzanne's smile widened. Go ahead, Mrs. Wilkins. I'd love to see you try. The older woman's eyes narrowed to slits, and for a moment, Susan thought she might lunge forward and throttle her. But then, with a frustrated huff, Mrs. Wilkins turned on her heel and stalked back to her car, the tires squealing as she peeled out of the driveway. Susan watched her go, a sense of triumph swelling in her chest. She knew that the battle was far from over, but in this moment, she felt invincible. The HOA had tried to bully her, and she had emerged victorious. As the days passed, Susan noticed a subtle shift in the neighborhood's dynamics. The once powerful HOA seemed to have lost its grip on the community, with residents openly challenging its authority and questioning its decisions. Susan even noticed a few of her neighbors quietly removing their own approved landscaping in a show of solidarity. And then, one morning, Suzanne awoke to the sound of commotion outside. Peering out the window, she gasped as she saw a team of city workers carefully installing a series of signs around her bird feeder. Certified EcoSpot, read the bold text, accompanied by the city's official seal. Susan rushed outside, her heart pounding with excitement. "What's going on?" she asked, unable to contain her grin. The foreman turned to her, a smile spreading across his weathered face. "Ma'am, the city has officially designated your bird feeder as a protected wildlife habitat. These signs are to ensure that no one tries to interfere with it." Susan felt a surge of joy, her eyes brimming with tears of happiness. The HOA had tried to take away her beloved feeder, but in the end, the city had stepped in to safeguard it. It was a victory not just for her, but for the entire community. In the weeks that followed, Suzanne's bird feeder became a source of pride and unity for the entire neighborhood. Neighbors would gather around it, admiring the colorful array of feathered visitors and marveling at the city's involvement. The HOA, however, remained a thorn in Suzanne's side. Mrs. Wilkins, in particular, seemed hell-bent on exacting her revenge, often going out of her way to confront Susan or make snide comments about the eyesore in her yard. One day, as Susan was watering her garden, she heard the familiar sound of Mrs. Wilkins' car pulling into the driveway. Bracing herself, she watched as the older woman stormed towards her, her face a mask of fury. "Miss Parsons, I've had enough of this nonsense," she spat, her bony finger pointed accusingly at the bird feeder. "It's time you took that thing down, once and for all." Susan straightened up, meeting the woman's gaze with a steely resolve. "I'm afraid that's not an option, Mrs. Wilkins. The city has made it very clear that the feeder is a protected ecospot." Mrs. Wilkins' eyes narrowed to slits. "I don't care what the city says. This is my neighborhood, and I won't have you flaunting your disregard for our rules." Susan felt a surge of anger. "Your rules are the problem, Mrs. Wilkins. They're outdated, restrictive, and completely out of touch with the needs of our community." The older woman's nostrils flared, and for a moment, Susan thought she might actually strike her. "How dare you? The HOA is the backbone of this neighborhood, and we won't let the likes of you undermine our authority." Susan crossed her arms over her chest, her chin raised in defiance. "Well, it seems like the city has a different opinion. And quite frankly, I'm not the only one who's fed up with the HOA's heavy-handed tactics." Mrs. Wilkins' face flushed with rage. "Is that a threat, Miss Parsons?" Susan shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "Not a threat, Mrs. Wilkins. Just a simple observation." The older woman opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, her eyes narrowing to slits. With a frustrated huff, she turned on her heel and stormed back to her car, the tires squealing as she peeled out of the driveway. Susan watched her go, a sense of triumph swelling in her chest. She knew that the battle with the HOA was far from over, but in that moment she felt empowered, knowing that she had the support of her community and the backing of the city. As the days passed, Suzanne noticed a growing sense of unrest within the HOA. Rumors began to circulate about dissension among the board members, with some of the more progressive residents openly challenging the organization's outdated policies. And then, one day, Susan received an unexpected knock on her door. Surprised, she opened it to find a group of her neighbors, their faces alight with excitement. "Susan, we've got something to show you," said Sarah, her eyes sparkling. Susan followed the group to the end of the block, where a large, colorful banner had been hung, adorned with the words Neighborhood EcoFest. "We've organized a community event to celebrate the city's recognition of your bird feeder," Sarah explained, a proud grin on her face. "We're going to have all kinds of activities. Bird watching, native plant sales, even a raffle for for a backyard composter. Susan felt a lump rise in her throat, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. "You guys, this is incredible. I can't believe you did all this." Sarah pulled her into a tight hug. "It's the least we could do. You stood up for all of us, Suzanne. This is our way of saying thank you." As Suzanne looked around at the smiling faces of her neighbors, she knew that the battle with the HOA was far from over. But in that moment, she felt a sense of hope, a glimmer of the true community spirit that had been buried beneath the HOA's rigid control. The neighborhood Eco-Fest was a resounding success, drawing in hundreds of residents eager to celebrate the city's recognition of Suzanne's bird feeder. Local businesses and environmental organizations set up informative booths, while children delighted in the interactive nature exhibits and scavenger hunts. Suzanne beamed with pride as she watched her neighbors mingle and engage with one another, their spirits lifted by a shared sense of purpose. For years, the HOA had kept the community at arm's length, dictating what could and couldn't be done in the name of property values. But now, the tables had turned, and the residents were reclaiming their neighborhood. As the festivities wound down, Suzanne found herself surrounded by a group of her fellow residents, all eager to express their gratitude. "Thank you for standing up to the HOA," one woman said, her eyes shining with emotion. "You've given us all the courage to speak up and fight for our community." Susan felt a lump rise in her throat. "It wasn't just me," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "This was a team effort. All of you have played a part in making this happen." The group erupted in enthusiastic nods and murmurs of agreement. Suzanne felt a surge of pride and affection for her neighbors, their once divided community now united in a common cause. As the days passed, Suzanne noticed a tangible shift in the neighborhood's dynamics. The HOA, once the undisputed ruler of the community, seemed to be losing its grip on power. Residents were openly challenging the organization's decisions, questioning its authority, and even organizing their own initiatives to promote environmental sustainability and community engagement. And then, one morning, Susan received an unexpected knock on her door. Surprised, she opened it to find Mrs. Wilkins, the HOA president, standing on her doorstep, her face uncharacteristically contrite. "Miss Parsons," the older woman began, her voice barely above a whisper. I owe you an apology." Susan blinked, taken aback by the unexpected admission. "An apology?" Mrs. Wilkins nodded, her eyes downcast. "I've been too rigid in my interpretation of the HOA guidelines. I've let my own personal biases cloud my judgment, and as a result, I've alienated the very people I was supposed to serve." Susan felt a surge of surprise, but she remained silent, allowing the woman to continue. "The Eco-Fest was a wake-up call for me," Mrs. Wilkins admitted, her gaze finally meeting Suzanne's. "I saw the joy and community spirit it brought to our neighborhood, and I realized that my narrow-minded approach was doing more harm than good." Susan felt a flicker of sympathy for the woman, despite their long-standing feud. "I appreciate your honesty, Mrs. Wilkins. It can't have been easy to come here and admit that." The older woman nodded, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I know I've been a thorn in your side, and I want to make amends. If you're willing, I'd like to work with you and the other residents to find a way to better integrate our community's environmental initiatives into the HOA guidelines." Susan felt a wave of surprise and cautious optimism. I'm honestly not sure what to say. This is a pretty big turnaround, even for you." Mrs. Wilkins nodded, her expression somber. "I know, and I understand if you're hesitant to trust me. But I promise I'm genuinely committed to making a change. For the sake of our neighborhood, I'm willing to put aside my own pride and work together with all of you." Susan studied the woman's face, searching for any sign of insincerity. But all she saw was a genuine desire to make amends and find a way to bridge the divide. Slowly, Suzanne nodded. "All right, Mrs. Wilkins, I'm willing to give it a try." Over the next few weeks, Susan found herself in the unexpected position of working alongside Mrs. Wilkins and the HOA board to revise the community guidelines. It was a delicate dance, as the residents' trust had been deeply eroded by years of heavy-handed tactics and perceived injustices. But to Susan's surprise, Mrs. Wilkins seemed genuinely committed to making amends. She listened intently to the concerns and suggestions of her neighbors, acknowledging the HOA's past missteps and vowing to implement a more inclusive, community-focused approach. As the new guidelines began to take shape, Susan marveled at the level of collaboration and goodwill that had emerged. Where there had once been division and resentment, there was now a sense of shared purpose and a renewed commitment to making the neighborhood a better place. "I can't believe how much things have changed," Sarah remarked one day as she and Suzanne admired the flourishing bird feeder. "It's like the whole community has been reborn." Susan nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I know. It's been a long, hard road, but I think we're finally starting to find our footing." Sarah reached out and squeezed Suzanne's hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "And it's all thanks to you, Suzanne. You were the one who stood up and fought for what was right, even when it seemed like the whole world was against you." Susan felt a surge of emotion, her throat tightening. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," she murmured, blinking back tears. "This is a victory for the whole community." As the new guidelines were finalized and presented to the neighborhood, Suzanne couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. The HOA had not only recognized the importance of the bird feeder, but had also embraced a more inclusive, eco-friendly approach to community management. And then, just when Suzanne thought the dust had settled, she received an unexpected visit from Mrs. Wilkins, the HOA president. "Miss Parsons," the older woman began, her voice uncharacteristically soft. I want to thank you." Susan blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Thank me? For what?" Mrs. Wilkins drew in a deep breath, her gaze meeting Suzanne's. "For your persistence, your courage, and your unwavering commitment to this community. If it weren't for you, we might never have realized the extent of our own blindness and rigidity." Susan felt a surge of surprise, but she remained silent, allowing the woman to continue. "You've taught me, taught all of us, that true community isn't about adhering to a set of arbitrary rules, but about coming together to support and uplift one another. And for that, I am truly grateful." Susan felt a lump rise in her throat, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mrs. Wilkins, I don't know what to say." The older woman offered a small, tentative smile. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that I'm committed to being a better leader, a better neighbor, and a better steward of this community. And I have you to thank for that." Without another word, Mrs. Wilkins turned and walked away, leaving Suzanne standing on her doorstep, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions: pride, gratitude, and a renewed sense of hope for the future. As she watched the HOA president's retreating figure, Suzanne knew that the battle had been won, not just for her bird feeder, but for the entire neighborhood. The community had come together, stronger and more resilient than ever before, and she couldn't wait to see what they would accomplish next. In the months that followed, the transformation of Suzanne's neighborhood was nothing short of remarkable. The once rigid HOA guidelines had been overhauled, embracing a more eco-friendly, community-focused approach that empowered residents to take an active role in shaping their shared spaces. Suzanne's beloved bird feeder remained the centerpiece of the community, with regular events and educational programs organized around it. Children delighted in the colorful array of feathered visitors, while adults marveled at the abundance of local wildlife that had been drawn to the newly designated eco-spot. But the changes went far beyond the bird feeder. Residents banded together to create community gardens, organize litter cleanups, and advocate for the installation of renewable energy sources throughout the neighborhood. The once fractured community had been reborn, united by a shared vision of sustainability and civic engagement. And at the heart of it all was Susan, her once solitary battle now transformed into a rallying cry for the entire neighborhood. She found herself in high demand, invited to speak at community meetings, lead nature walks, and even consult with other HOAs that were struggling to reconcile their outdated policies with the growing environmental consciousness of their residents. "You're a hero, Susan," Sarah would often tell her, her eyes shining with admiration. "Without you, none of this would have been possible." Susan would always brush off the praise, insisting that it was a collective effort, a testament to the power of community. But deep down, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing that her steadfast determination had ignited a spark that had now grown into a blazing fire of change. And then, one day, Susan received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Wilkins, the former HOA president, now a changed woman. "Miss Parsons," the older woman said, her voice tinged with a newfound humility, "I've come to invite you to a special event." Susan blinked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "An event?" Mrs. Wilkins nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "The HOA is hosting a recognition ceremony to honor your contributions to the community. We'd be honored if you would attend." Susan felt a surge of surprise, followed by a wave of cautious optimism. I don't know what to say. This is quite unexpected." The older woman chuckled, her eyes warm with sincerity. "I know, and I can't blame you for your skepticism. But I promise, this is a genuine gesture of gratitude and respect." Susan studied the woman's face, searching for any hint of deception. But all she saw was a genuine desire to make amends and acknowledge the pivotal role she had played in the community's transformation. Slowly, Susan nodded. "All right, Mrs. Wilkins, I'll be there." The ceremony was a bittersweet affair, tinged with both pride and a sense of closure. As Susan stood at the podium, surrounded by her neighbors and the members of the newly reformed HOA board, she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "This community has been through a lot," she began, her voice steady and assured. "We've faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and learned to work together in ways we never thought possible." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the crowd, each face reflecting the same sense of pride and belonging. "But through it all, we've emerged stronger, more connected, and more committed to our shared vision of a sustainable, vibrant neighborhood. And for that, I am deeply grateful." As the crowd erupted in thunderous applause, Susan felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. The battle with the HOA had been won, but the real victory was the transformation of an entire community, a testament to the power of perseverance, civic engagement, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest actions can have a profound impact.